The same morning my brother was handed the keys to his luxurious new home, I was handed an eviction notice taped to my door by our own mother. I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I just packed my bag and made sure I didn't leave empty-handed. Deca woke up that morning to the sound of laughter and loud music coming from downstairs. At first, she smiled, thinking something happy had happened. She got out of bed and peeked through her window, only to see balloons, cameras, and neighbors gathering outside. Her mother and stepfather were smiling proudly, handing her older brother Kagiso the keys to a beautiful new house. Everyone was cheering for him, hugging him like he was a hero. Deca stood there in silence, her heart heavy but her face calm. She had lived in this house her whole life, helped clean it, cared for everyone, and never asked for much. Yet, no one called her to join the celebration. She stepped out of her room, hoping maybe someone would say something nice to her too. But as she reached for the doorknob, her hand froze. Taped to her bedroom door was a paper. It was an eviction notice, with her name on it. It said she had just 3 days to leave the house. No explanation, no discussion, just a cruel, cold message from her own mother. Deca held the paper in her shaking hands, reading it over and over again, hoping it was a mistake, but it wasn't. Her mother gave Kagiso a house and gave her the street. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She quietly closed her door and sat on her bed, everything around her suddenly feeling like it didn't belong to her anymore. The same house where she had so many memories was no longer home. That morning, while her brother was being celebrated for doing nothing, she was being thrown out like she meant nothing. It was the kind of morning that breaks you or changes you forever. Deca sat on the edge of her bed, holding the eviction notice in her hand. Her heart felt heavy, but her eyes stayed dry. For years, she had been the quiet strength of the family. She was always the one who helped clean, cooked meals when her mother was tired, and looked after everyone without complaint. When arguments broke out between her mother and stepfather, Deca was the one who calmed things down. When Kagiso got into trouble, it was Deca who covered for him, spoke up for him, and even shared her little savings with him more than once. She was the one who remembered birthdays, brought tea when someone was sick, and never asked for anything in return. She thought if she kept giving, they would one day see her. But now, she understood. They never did. Downstairs, her mother kept laughing, showing off Kagiso like he was some great champion. But Deca knew the truth. Kagiso never worked hard for anything. He never helped around the house. He never stayed home unless he needed money or food. And yet, he was being given everything. A brand new house, praise, love, attention. While Deca, who never left their side, was being kicked out like she was just a visitor. She looked around her small room. The walls were filled with old books, drawings and memories. This was the room where she stayed up all night to study. The room where she cried quietly when no one cared about her dreams. The room where she prayed for her family, even when they ignored her. But now, it didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like a place that used her and was now done with her. Deca suddenly realized she had become invisible in her own home. Her love, her care, her sacrifices, they didn't matter to the people she gave them to. Her mother didn't even have the heart to speak to her face to face. She just left a cold piece of paper on her door. That was the thank you Deca got after all these years. Her chest ached, but her spirit began to shift. Maybe it was time to stop trying to be seen by people who chose not to see her. Maybe she wasn't meant to stay where she was always treated like nothing. As her brother celebrated outside, Deca slowly folded the eviction notice, placed it in her bag, and whispered to herself, "They may have forgotten me, but I won't forget myself." Deca didn't scream. She didn't ask questions. She didn't beg anyone to let her stay. She just accepted what the paper on her door said. With a calmness that surprised even her, she picked up a small bag and began packing her things. She folded her clothes neatly, packed her books, and carefully wrapped the few photos she had of her late father. No one came to check on her. No one knocked. The celebration downstairs continued like she didn't exist. It was like she was already gone. She moved slowly around her room, taking only the things that truly mattered. Her favorite sweater, her notebook, a small wooden frame her father once carved for her. She didn't have much, but each item she packed had meaning. As she zipped up her bag, her eyes landed on the corner of the hallway near the kitchen, the old storage room. It had always been filled with dusty boxes and forgotten things. Something inside her told her to look there one last time before she left. She walked quietly, not wanting to be seen. When she opened the old door, A wave of dust filled the air. The light was dim, and the room smelled of old memories. She moved a few broken chairs, pushed aside a pile of newspapers, and then she saw it. A brown box, sealed with tape. Written in faded marker on the top were the words, "For Deca, on her graduation." Her hands trembled. She hadn't seen her father in years. He had passed away just before she turned 16. But this box had been waiting for her. She gently opened it. Inside was a worn leather notebook, a small envelope, and a key tied to a ribbon. The notebook smelled like her father's cologne. She opened the first page, and in his handwriting it said, "My dearest Deca, if you're reading this, it means you've grown into the strong woman I always knew you would be." Tears finally filled her eyes. Her father hadn't forgotten her. He had left something only for her. The envelope held old property papers, showing her name on a piece of land he bought years ago. The key was to that land's small home. In that quiet moment, surrounded by dust and silence, Deca felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, loved, remembered. While the people around her gave her nothing but silence and rejection, her father had left her a gift that would change her life. She wiped her tears, clutched the box close, and walked out of that house, not empty-handed, but full of new hope. Deca sat on a wooden bench under a tree near the bus station, holding the box tightly on her lap. She hadn't opened it fully before. Now, with a calm breeze around her and silence in her heart, she gently lifted the lid again. The soft leather notebook lay on top, old but carefully kept. She touched it, as if touching her father's hand. Inside, the pages were filled with his writing, not just messages but deep thoughts, advice and dreams. He wrote about life, about staying strong, about finding peace even when the world is unfair. He had written stories from his past, lessons he learned the hard way, and beautiful words just for her. Deca read one line out loud, "When the world forgets you, let your roots remember you." Under the notebook, she found a neat stack of documents. She unfolded the first one, and her breath caught. It was a land certificate. Her name, Deca Ebele, was printed in bold letters. Her father had bought a piece of land in a quiet village, far from the city. He had put it in her name years ago. No one in the family ever mentioned it. No one even hinted about it. But here it was, proof that she had something that truly belonged to her. It was not a gift out of pity. It was a decision made with love and purpose. Then she picked up the small silver key, wrapped in ribbon. It felt warm in her hand. She knew this wasn't just a key to a building. It was a key to her fresh start, a way out of all the pain, rejection, and sadness. It was her chance to build something of her own, something honest and peaceful. Her father had planned this all along. He had seen her heart, her strength, her pain, and though he wasn't here anymore, he had made sure she would not be left with nothing. Deca looked at the notebook again, smiling through her tears. Her father had believed in her when no one else did. He didn't need to be loud or proud about it. He just left her a quiet gift, her own land, her own space, and his words to guide her. She now knew she wasn't lost. She wasn't abandoned. She had a path waiting, far from the noise, where she could finally grow into everything she was meant to be. Deca arrived in the village with nothing but a small bag, a notebook full of her father's wisdom, and a heart full of quiet determination. The air was different here, calm, clean, and filled with the scent of earth and trees. Her grandmother, Mudiwa, stood at the gate with open arms, tears in her eyes. "Welcome home, my child," she whispered, holding Deca close. It had been years, but love needed no explanation. The land her father left was overgrown and wild, weeds everywhere. The soil was dry and cracked in some parts. But to Deca, it was perfect. It was hers. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, she worked the land. She pulled weeds with her bare hands, planted seeds with care, and studied how to grow herbs the natural way. She didn't have much money, but she had time, patience, and a strong will. Mudiwa showed her old farming methods, and the villagers shared tips with kindness. Deca listened, learned, and never complained. She planted lemongrass, hibiscus, moringa, and mint, plants her father once talked about in his notebook. She built wooden frames for beehives with help from a local carpenter and began harvesting fresh honey. Every evening, she sat on the porch, packaging herbs into brown paper bags. labeling each one by hand. She took pictures of her products with her phone and started sharing them online. She called it From Papa's Soil. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, orders began to come in. A small cafe in the nearby town wanted her tea blends. Then, a wellness shop in the city placed a big request for her raw honey. She worked harder, but smarter. She didn't chase anything. She just focused on her roots, her craft, and her peace. Her tiny house became a hub of quiet success. Bees buzzed gently around the hives. Herbs danced in the wind. Deca finally smiled with ease. She had turned a forgotten piece of land into a place of life and healing. The same soil her father once walked on now held her future. It wasn't about becoming rich. It was about building something real, something that fed her soul. And in that quiet village, far from the noise that once hurt her, Deca had started again. Not with anger, but with grace. She didn't need revenge. She had found something better. Purpose. Months passed, and Deca's quiet effort began to speak louder than any words. What started as a small village project was now catching eyes far beyond her little farm. One afternoon, as she was packaging a batch of dried hibiscus petals, her phone buzzed with an email notification. She almost didn't open it, thinking it was just another regular inquiry. But as she read, her hands began to shake. An international wellness brand had come across her products online. They were impressed by the purity, the story, and the traditional methods behind it all. They didn't just want samples. They wanted to place a large, long-term order. Deca sat still for a moment, holding back tears. Not because of the money, but because someone, somewhere in the world, saw value in something she built from scratch, with soil, sun, and soul. She knew this was her big chance, but she also knew she couldn't do it alone. That evening, she called her cousin Nyasha, a smart, business-minded woman living in the nearby town. Nyasha came the next day, excited and proud. "Let's do this together," she said, holding Deca's hand tightly. They made a plan. They expanded the herb gardens, added more beehives, and trained local women from the village to help with sorting, drying, and packaging. Deca's tiny home could no longer handle the growing demand, so they transformed it. The living room became a clean, organized processing space. Shelves were built, a drying machine was installed, and the kitchen was turned into a herbal lab. Labels, jars, and boxes now filled every corner of the house. The farm became busy but peaceful. Laughter echoed as workers moved through the fields, and the sweet scent of mint and honey floated in the air. Trucks started coming to pick up shipments. Deca's brand, once a quiet name online, was now being mentioned in health magazines and wellness blogs. Nyasha handled the numbers and emails, while Deca focused on the land and quality. Together, they created something beautiful, something rooted in tradition, but ready for the world. It wasn't just a farm anymore. It was a center of hope, a place where village hands worked to send healing products across oceans. People now came to visit, to learn, to ask, how did she do it? And Deca, standing tall in the same land her father once walked, simply smiled. She didn't chase success, she grew it. Deca had worked day and night to bring her dream to life. The herbs she planted, the honey she harvested, the workers she trained, all of it had led to this one moment. Her brand, Deca Roots, was finally ready for the world. The launch was going to be big, much bigger than anyone expected. She designed the invitations herself, making sure to send one to her mother and brother. She didn't write any long message, just a simple invite, the date, the time, the venue, her father's land, now a transformed herbal empire. She hoped, deep down, that they would come, not because she needed them, but because she still held a small piece of love for her family. But when her mother received the envelope, she rolled her eyes. "A village party," she said, tossing it aside. Kagiso laughed too. Who wants to stand in the sun and clap for dried leaves and grass? They didn't know that Deca's little farm had caught the attention of people far beyond their world. The day of the launch arrived. The land was decorated with colourful cloths, fresh flowers, and wooden signs with the name Deca Roots shining proudly. Guests arrived in cars, not just neighbours, but health experts, business owners, journalists, and even government officials. Cameras flashed as Deca stepped out in a simple, elegant outfit made by a local tailor. She stood with confidence, smiling kindly at everyone. Then something unexpected happened. A black SUV pulled up, and out stepped the state governor. a respected figure known for supporting local industries. He had heard of Deca's story and came to show support. As he stood beside her, shaking her hand, the cameras zoomed in, reporters asked questions, people cheered, and Deca's name started trending online. Back in the city, her mother and brother sat in front of the TV, mouths open. The news anchor said, "Meet Deca Moyo, the woman behind Deca Roots, the fast-rising herbal brand that started from a forgotten piece of land." There she was, the daughter they once ignored, now standing tall, not just in their eyes but in the eyes of the nation. They didn't reply to the invite. They thought it was small, but what they missed was a moment they could never get back, the beginning of something powerful and a chance to stand beside the woman who had risen with quiet strength. While Deca's name was shining across the country, things were falling apart back home. Kagiso's big, beautiful house, the one gifted to him with loud celebration, had become a problem no one saw coming. It turned out the house wasn't fully paid for. The money used to get it came from loans their stepfather secretly took, lying about his income and using fake promises as security. When the banks came knocking, there was no way to hide. Kagiso had never worked a real job. He had always relied on others, first their mother, then their stepfather. So when the letters came demanding payment, he didn't know what to do. At first, he laughed it off. But the day men in suits came with papers and sealed the gate, his laughter turned to panic. The house, the pride of the family, was gone, just like that. The locks were changed. The car was taken too. Everything was stripped away. Their stepfather vanished soon after. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Maybe he ran because he was scared, or maybe he was tired of holding up a lie. Whatever the reason, he left behind a mess too heavy for Kagiso and their mother to carry. She, who once walked proudly and looked down on Deca, was now broken. She lost her job weeks earlier due to company cuts, but never told anyone. Now, with no money, no home, and no husband, she sat on a plastic chair outside a borrowed room, staring at her hands in silence. Kagiso, once full of pride, started asking around for small jobs. No one took him seriously. He didn't have experience or skills, just a name that now reminded people of failure. That's when they both remembered the one person they had pushed away, the one they thought was nothing. Deca. They heard stories, not just on TV, but from neighbors, from the internet, even from people in church. Stories of how Deca had turned a piece of forgotten land into a business, of how she now traveled with business leaders and met important people. Their hearts burned, not with jealousy anymore, but with shame. And in their silence, sitting on cracked cement and eating borrowed meals, they whispered the same name they once ignored. Deca, the daughter they once treated like a stranger, the girl they evicted with no explanation. Now, they needed her. But would she ever look back? Deca returned to the house she once called home, not with pride, not with anger, but with calm strength in her heart. She didn't come to show off or remind them of how they treated her. She only wanted one thing, her late father's violin. That small wooden instrument, now old and dusty, was the only thing that still connected her to the love she once felt in that house. It held his songs, his laughter, and his dreams for her. When she stepped through the broken gate, everything looked different. The flowers she used to water were gone. The walls were cracked. The house was no longer full of laughter. Only silence and sadness lived there now. Her mother sat on a small stool, looking thinner, older, and tired. When she saw Deca, her eyes filled with tears. She stood up slowly and walked toward her like a woman waking from a long nightmare. "Please," she said softly, "stay, don't leave again." But Deca stayed quiet. Her heart was heavy, but not cold. As she walked inside, Kagiso came out of his room, avoiding her eyes. His pride had disappeared. He didn't speak like a brother used to being spoiled. He spoke like a man who had lost everything. "Do you maybe have a job for me?" he asked in a low voice. Deca didn't say yes or no. She simply nodded, walked past him, and went straight to her father's old room. There, under the bed, she found it, the violin case. She wiped the dust, opened it slowly, and smiled through teary eyes. The strings were a little rusty, but it still looked beautiful. She hugged it close, like a part of her heart had come home. Before she left, she turned to her mother and handed her a sealed envelope. The woman opened it quickly, thinking it was money, but inside was a letter. It was her father's handwriting, a note he had written long ago, telling Deca how proud he was of her, how he knew she would rise, even when others doubted her, how she was the heart of the family. Deca said nothing more. She walked out with the violin in her arms, leaving behind no anger, no revenge, only truth. Her silence spoke louder than any words. They had lost something they would never get back. Not money, not success, but the trust of a daughter who had once given them everything. Inside the envelope was a letter, carefully folded, with her father's handwriting, that Deca hadn't seen in years. As she read his words, it felt like he was speaking to her one last time, his voice gentle but strong. He reminded her that real value isn't found in big houses or fancy titles, but in honesty, hard work, and the strength of one's heart. He told her to always hold on to her truth and never let anyone's actions make her forget who she truly is. With that letter in her hand, Deca felt a calm she hadn't known before. She wasn't just leaving with her father's violin or the small fortune she built. She was walking away with peace inside her soul. She understood now that the power she had was not from revenge or making others regret their mistakes, but from choosing herself, her dreams, and her future. Her brand, Deca Roots, was no longer just a small village business. It had grown into something the world watched with respect and admiration. But what mattered most was that it was her journey, her own story of strength and faith. She had taken the land no one believed in and turned it into gold. But more importantly, she had taken control of her life and happiness. As she held the violin close, Deca smiled quietly. This was her victory, not the kind that comes with loud celebrations or enemies defeated, but the kind that fills your heart with pride and hope. She walked away from the past without anger or bitterness, carrying only what truly mattered: her father's love, her own courage, and a future she was ready to build. In that moment, Deca wasn't just a forgotten daughter or someone who left a broken home. She was a woman who had found herself, and that was worth more than anything else in the world. If you believe in rising above pain and choosing yourself, share this story with someone who needs hope today. Don't forget to like, comment your own journey, and subscribe for more inspiring tales that remind us your true power comes from within. What would you do if you were in Deca's shoes? Let me know below.